Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
We'll talk Louisiana Industrial Property Tax Exemption Program when Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil and Tim Harris of Eastman Chemical join us on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
I've been doing business with LBIS for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes LBIS a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Promoting workplace safety and family wellness. That's our motto at Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. The Gulf Coast staff is made up of some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana. We care about your safety and your bottom line. With 8 convenient locations in the greater Baton Rouge area, our services include injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. For more information, visit us on the web at gcombr.info and ride the wave to safety. Passion, experience, safety. These are what set Arkell Constructors apart as a premier general contractor. At Arkell Constructors, our goal is to exceed our clients' expectations, whether it's commercial, industrial, or facility maintenance. We have the team and processes in place to provide a solution for you. To us, every project is a resume for our future. Arkell Constructors, the solution for your next building project.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to be joined by 2 prominent industrial plant managers in our state, Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil and Tim Harris of Eastman Chemical. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
LSU grad, a couple of Tulane grads here, right?
Yeah,
I know you both are proud of that. My daughter's at Tulane. A lot of my money goes toward Tulane. Wonderful university, and so I'm hoping that intellectually I can keep up with you guys today. One of the things that I believe is critically important for industry is to talk about the products that you make and how they impact daily lives. So I'm going to ask you both. We'll start with Angela, but tell us about your facility, tell us about what you make, and tell us how those products impact us on a daily basis.
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me here this morning. It's great. So I work at the Baton Rouge polyolefins plant, ExxonMobil Chemical, where we make polyethylene and polypropylene. And it's difficult to say in a succinct way all the ways polyethylene and polypropylene touch your life every day. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, nearly everything you touch has some form of polyethylene or polypropylene in it. At my plant specifically, we have about 280 employees and about 100 contractors, and they're making a lot of the polyethylene that goes into milk jugs. So if you poured a glass of milk this morning with your breakfast, then you've handled the polyethylene probably that came right out of our Baton Rouge facility. A lot of our polypropylene goes into automotive applications, things that help to lightweight cars and improve fuel efficiency. Goes into non-woven fabrics, diapers even. So we could spend the entire segment on that. I don't think you want me to.
But if you think about it, you start off with the milk jug in the morning, right? Diapers, a lot of different things that are critically important. Tim, your plant is in St. Gabriel, just outside of Baton Rouge. Tell us about your plant and about some of the products that the final products we might recognize.
So yeah, you're right. None of the products we make you're going to see in the store. But we make products that are all based off a nitrogen atom, and those products go into clean drinking water, they go to crop protection, so the food we eat, pharmaceuticals, insect repellent, personal care products, shampoo, body wash, laundry detergent, fabric softener, all those kinds of things. I think it's be impossible for you to go through a single day without interacting with some of the molecules that we make.
critically important things that the industry produces. Those of us who don't work in industry every day, and I say this often in the consulting business, we may ride by these plants and we see fences and stacks and gates and pumps and stuff. And we don't always connect them to the wonderful products that help make our lives better every day. And that's what you guys are focused on. So we appreciate that overview. Angela, I want to go back to you. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about investment in our state, about job creation, and about the incentives that help make that possible. ExxonMobil has announced $50+ billion worth of potential investment along the Gulf Coast over the next few years. A significant portion of that could be right here in Louisiana, but we are in a significant competition with the state of Texas and other southern states, obviously. And these incentives are critically important. But talk about what Exxon has announced and what it could mean to Louisiana.
Absolutely. I'm particularly excited about that recent announcement because it gives us an opportunity to expand potentially significantly at my facility. So today we would essentially be doubling the polypropylene capacity if we're successful in bringing this project to the Baton Rouge polyolefins plant. And you're exactly right. We are competing globally, first of all, and specifically here in the Gulf Coast for the siting decision. We would anticipate making a decision on this particular capital investment by the end of the year. So I would love to be back here and talk to you about that opportunity coming to fruition.
Well, you know, it's one of those things as we talk about that investment follows certainty. And there has been some uncertainty created in Louisiana. In 2016, Governor Edwards signed an executive order that made changes to Louisiana's most successful and most utilized incentive program, the 10-year industrial property tax exemption, the Industrial Tax Exemption Program, as it's commonly referred to, ITEP. Some of those changes shortened the period, made it less valuable. It also brought less certainty and stability to the approval process. So, Tim, why don't you give our viewers an overview from your perspective of the changes that have taken place to that very important program?
So as, excuse me, as you alluded, the program used to be 5 years, you get 100%, and then that could be renewed for another 5 years at 100%. And all you had to do was meet the requirements that you agreed to in your initial contract. So it was spelled out, you've well understood what the requirements were for the initial application and then for the renewal. And so the executive order changed really three things. The first is that it reduced that period, of that renewal period, from 5 years at 100% to 3 years at 80%. So now instead of a 10-year program, it's an 8-year program, and it's not as much money as it was before. The second is it took out the miscellaneous capital additions. These are kind of the small projects that we all do to kind of keep the business going, and Texas still offers them. This is something, so we have to compete with Texas, this is something they offer. And the final thing is that you got to have additional approvals now. Every taxing jurisdiction that we sit in, so that would be the city, the parish, the school board, the sheriff, they all have to agree. And so these are organizations that weren't directly involved before, so we have to get out now and educate them on what it is, what the project is, and we have to get their approval. This all injects in a significant amount of uncertainty in the process.
We've got about a minute and a half left in this segment, Angela, so your thoughts on the changes.
So there's no doubt the uncertainty has been the biggest challenge for us in industry. For this particular project, I'm competing, as you say, with my peers in the Gulf Coast to bring this project to Baton Rouge. And that lack of certainty means when I look at the project economics to bring it here in Baton Rouge, I'm not able to really count on that. That's as big of an issue as anything else, really. I mean, we're making these decisions a couple of years in advance, and it's very challenging to go forward and look for that investment when you don't really know the tax burden, right? That uncertainty is a cloud over the opportunity.
We visited with Dr. Lawrence Scott, noted economist in the state of Louisiana, and one of the things he said is that since the changes have taken place and the executive order was signed, that actuaries within companies like yours sit in their rooms, and as they're analyzing and comparing the value of doing business in each state in terms of that industrial property tax exemption, they're scoring that as a 0 today. Mm-hmm. That can't be good.
No, you're exactly right. And it's a hard, cold math. That's what it boils down to. It's not about whether Louisiana's a great state to live in. It certainly is. I love being here. And I'd love to see them. We have projects we're looking at too. I'd love to see them come here. But these, without the uncertainty, means it gets scored heavily discounted.
Let's take a break. We're going to come back. We'll talk about that approval process at the local level and what it's meant in terms of these projects. And we'll talk a little later about some comparisons to investment that has been announced prior to the executive order and what's happened afterward. We're visiting with Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil and Tim Harris of Eastman. And you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools? And that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil and Tim Harris of Eastman are my guests, and we're talking about the Louisiana Industrial Property Tax Program. Angela, you mentioned the investment that ExxonMobil is planning along the Gulf Coast. You mentioned a specific opportunity at your facility, the ExxonMobil Baton Rouge polyolefins plant. Economic development is all about job creation, right, and salary and quality of life for the people who work in those facilities. And there are some significant job numbers tied to what you're planning to do across the Gulf Coast and in your facility. Talk about the job aspects of this a little bit.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, this is a large project, hundreds of millions of dollars. During the construction, we would peak at probably 600 construction positions, but then as the project would start up, potentially as early as 2021, we're looking at 60 permanent positions at the facility, additional to the 350 that I mentioned earlier as our base population. And I think it's important, Tim, for folks to realize it's not just the jobs and the payroll, it's the money that we're spending locally in the surrounding community and the ripple effect of that from the moment the project hits go, right, until years after it's in place and producing these products we spoke about at the beginning of the segment.
Tim, I want to get you to weigh in on this because I think Angela makes a great point there. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what we hear most in the media about the industrial property tax exemption program, and that's, quote, what's being lost, right? But if a project never comes here, I don't know how it could be a loss. But when we talk about these jobs, if you think about the numbers that the Louisiana Chemical Association uses in terms of spinoff, if you think about sales tax from the very beginning, if you think about payroll taxes that exist, if you think about, as Angela mentioned, the jobs that exist from the vendors and the suppliers that support these projects and support this investment, it really is a much bigger picture than we generally hear about. Your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned the spin-off jobs or the other jobs that are related. For every job in the plant, Lauren Scott, you referenced him earlier, one of the state's most noted economists, did a study for the chemical industry. That's what I know. And he decided or discovered that for every job in the plant, there are 10 jobs, almost 10 jobs, 9.6 or something, that are created out in the local economy that are related to that job. These are contractor jobs that are come to our plants. Some of them work full-time in the plants. These are people that support our turnarounds. These are the dry cleaners that we send our clothes to and the restaurants we go to. But if those jobs were to all go away, our state's unemployment would go to 20% overnight.
And
just a chemical.
And you mentioned it, right? It's the dry cleaner. It's the local consulting firm like the TJC Group. It is the automobile dealership. It is the local restaurants. I mean, if you think about some of these towns like St. Gabriel, like Chalmette, like other places where industry is prominent, and you went to the restaurateurs in those towns and you said, you know what, there is no more incentive to bring new jobs and capital investment here, and those contractors won't be coming in. They would be probably the most vocal opposition to those changes because it does spin down and impact the entire economy. I know you've seen that from your projects as well.
Oh, absolutely. The 10-to-1 ripple effect, as we call it, it's tremendous. You can see it every day, right? And if you drop that pebble in the pond, as Dr. Scott says, and you watch that ripple grow, I think folks don't realize how far it actually does go. 1 in every 10 jobs, that's tremendous, right, from a chemical industry perspective.
And it really has been the driver. If you think about oil and gas, petrochemical, and refining in our state, it really is the driver for our economy. So let's talk a little bit deeper about that. A lot of attention to the industrial tax exemption program and the changes that have been made. To groups like Together Louisiana, Together Baton Rouge, Together Iberville, Together Ascension, a big push about what local governments are, quote, losing. I make the argument that if you don't incentivize a project to come here and the investment does not take place, you wouldn't have gotten anything anyway. What we don't hear a lot about is what we've talked about, the fact that sales taxes begin to be collected immediately, that payroll taxes off of these contractor and construction jobs begin to be collected immediately. Why isn't it that we've seen more focus there? Why how do we make or bring more attention to the fact that from the very beginning, there is significant economic impact, and in perpetuity, regardless of what happens with the property tax? Your thoughts on that, Angela?
So, I think we need to do more like what we're doing today, to get out there and tell our story. Well, one thing that I think is a misnomer is the fact that this is a deferral of tax. It's not a permanent forgiveness of tax. So as we continue to invest, right, and it's a competitive atmosphere. We're competing to invest these dollars here in Louisiana, specifically in Baton Rouge. As one project rolls on, another one rolls off. So if you look at the Baton Rouge refinery, a significant investment in 2010 is about to roll back onto the tax books, and that'll infuse millions of tax dollars back. So it's kind of what you said, nothing from nothing is nothing, right?
And we want to be led to believe, or the media might lead us to believe, Together Louisiana might lead us to believe, that you're going to depreciate that asset over the course of the 10 years, so you'll never pay any property tax on it. That's just not the case.
Absolutely not. Most of these are 20 years or more, so you've got plenty of years left. And again, to your original point, the dollars are well beyond, the impact of the community is well beyond those tax dollars, right? It's the sales tax, which is from day one. It's our employees out in the community involved in volunteer activities. As you know, we've got some of the most generous employees out there, right? It's the investments we make in our local communities beyond the dollars that are going into the plant itself, right,
So
that
Tim,
these projects bring.
Go ahead.
So Tim, if you look at the 8 parishes that get the most ITEP, that'd be Ascension, Calcasieu, Iberville, EBR, Jefferson, St. Charles, St. James, and St. John the Baptist. Industry paid on average 2/3 of all the property tax in those parishes. That compares with about 50% statewide. So industry is paying more than its share in the ITEP parishes. And further, the more rural parishes, industry's paying over 80% of the property tax in those parishes.
We're going to take a break, and I want to come back and I want to drive home those points even more, because I think those statistics are the best argument for the program that we possibly have. Those parishes where the exemption program is the strongest are generally the wealthiest, and we'll talk about that more. We're visiting with Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil and Tim Harris of Eastman, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Passion, experience, safety. These are what set Arkell Constructors apart as a premier general contractor. At Arkell Constructors, our goal is to exceed our clients' expectations, whether it's commercial, industrial, or facility maintenance. We have the team and processes in place to provide a solution for you. To us, every project is a resume for our future. Arkell Constructors, the solution for your next building project.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Angela Zeringue of ExxonMobil, Tim Harris of Eastman are my guests. Guys, we were visiting during the break about this concept of modernization, and if these facilities, these industrial plants, don't continue to modernize, they're going out of business, so to speak. We've heard the argument that says, look, they're not going to pick up all of this facility and move it somewhere else. Probably not. But if you don't continue to invest in those facilities, eventually you will lose all the jobs because they will go to places where that investment is wanted and where those jobs can be sustained. So from your perspective, Tim, talk about this whole idea of modernization and how critically important that it is that we continue to invest.
You know, I think the argument that the jobs that aren't going to go away right away is true, but some will. We won't lose them. We won't lose them all, but we'll lose some. And then next year we'll lose some more. And then the year after that, we'll lose some more even. So I think a good analogy would be to consider the iPhone. What would happen if Apple were to stop investing in modernizing and marketing the iPhone? There'd be some loyal users that would hang on, and they would hang on, but they'd lose some this year, they'd lose some next year, you know, and pretty soon we're BlackBerry.
Right, and what we talked about in terms of that is, you think about BlackBerry. There are no more jobs at BlackBerry, right? Those jobs have gone away. So it is important that if you don't continue to modernize, you lose them. And that's part of what you guys are trying to do with some of the projects that you're looking at bringing here, right?
Absolutely. It's a global economy. So if we're not growing in manufacturing, we're slowly dying. We have to compete with the most up-to-date technology. We have to meet our customers' demands, which grow. I mean, we're demanding as consumers, right? So we've got to put that money into these facilities to allow us to compete on that global platform. And if we don't, we are slowly dying. And we may not move an entire refinery, but we will and have idled units that are no longer competitive.
And so when you think about that modernization, it is in fact true, as you mentioned, Tim, that sometimes when you modernize, it takes fewer jobs to continue to run that unit maybe, but you have saved maybe 300 or 400 other jobs that are out there. Now, I want to switch gears because there's a couple of things I want to make sure that we get to before the end of the show, and that is this whole idea of Together Louisiana. ExxonMobil has been a particular target of these guys, and they've talked about how much you specifically have, quote, cost the East Baton Rouge Parish local government, specifically the schools. And we saw the Louisiana Association of Educators, the teachers union, talk about that last night too. I know that it is concerning for you that you guys have been a target. Talk about how you respond to those charges, Angela.
It's absolutely concerning. First, I mean, I'm a Louisiana native. I'm a product of public schools. My sister's a public school teacher. I'm absolutely committed to strong public education. And I feel like ExxonMobil has been a strong supporter of public education in Baton Rouge and in all the communities where we operate. First, I want to dispel the myth that we're not paying taxes. We are the single largest manufacturing employer in the state, and we're the single largest taxpayer in East Baton Rouge Parish. So our tax bill is not naught. It's $33 million, actually, right?
Significant.
Significant.
Right?
Significant.
And as you mentioned in the last segment, it will continue to be there as other pieces of equipment that have been subject to the property tax exemption come back onto the tax rolls after they've been there 10 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. 7% of EBR property tax comes from ExxonMobil. So, and that's just going to continue to grow as we continue to invest. I know we don't have all day. I could show you the trends. We've been growing tremendously the investment in the Gulf Coast based on the competitive environment that we have.
So Tim, we talked about the 8 ITEP parishes in the prior segment. I'd like to point out that in those parishes, teacher salaries average 5.9% above the state average in those ITEP parishes. 4 of the state's top 5 public school districts are in those ITEP parishes. Net income for those parishes is 17.9% above the state average, and most telling, our wealthiest parish, Ascension, where net income is almost 70% above the state average, also gets the most ITEP money. That is not a coincidence.
There is a direct correlation, right, to this incentive program and the wealth of your public entities in those parishes. Now, we've got about a minute and a half left here, so I want to make sure we hit this. You have done some pretty significant research, Tim, that no one else has done, right? You took a look at the announced investment prior to the governor's executive order and since. Talk about that.
Well, I'm an engineer, I like data. I remember that before the executive order, we were getting $1 billion announcement after $1 billion announcement, and then after it seems to be quite a bit quieter. So I did, and the LED's got a database. You can go look at Louisiana Economic Development. You want to go look at their Fast Lane database. They actually have 2, and you want the one for advanced notifications. They call it the Advances database. Search for filtered on ITEP, so you look at what I'm looking at. This is what I did. So I looked at the period before and after. And so before, there were 25 separate announcements that were over $1 billion. After, it's just 9. The total number of projects is down by 1/3. And the average value of each of those projects is half of what it was before. That works out to be $66.5 billion, with a B, billion dollars of projects that we are missing out on. Those projects represent 7,700 plant jobs, 62,000 contractor jobs, and 55,000 plant jobs that are not protected. We talked about the whole point of modernization and how that provides job security for the jobs we have. That's 55,000 that are left hanging out there, and almost 70,000 jobs that are not going to come here that would before. When Together Baton Rouge, Together Louisiana say it doesn't cost us jobs, there's 70,000 right there.
Not much more I could say about that. Tim Harris, Angela Zeringue, thanks for your time today. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.